I stand here for my sisters, mothers, daughters, friends, and for the other 1 in 3 women who will face some form of unwanted intimate partner violence abuse in their lifetime. For every woman who will have to stand in this space, nervous, nauseated, and scared to tell her story. In 2019, I was in a long-term relationship and I was looking up a recipe for dinner. I was using my partner's computer and I started typing in the search bar at the top, looking for a recipe. I was looking for Food Network and Fetlife popped up. I thought, oh, what is this? I opened it and it found out that it was a social networking site for people who were into kink, BDSM, sex, things like that. When I opened it, I saw that he had a profile. I clicked on it, and when I was looking through it, I found a video of myself. And in that video, I was blindfolded and engaged in a sexual act. You couldn't see my full face. You could only see sort of the rest of my body. I was sitting, in the living room. He was sitting across from me, and I sat there, and my heart just started to race. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to think. I couldn't believe that this happened. I did not recall consenting to having this video taken. He said he was sorry, and then he said, he needed help and he had made a mistake. So I supported him in that. I went to therapy with him. I supported him in trying to heal and get better, because the way it was framed to me is that he was having severe mental health issues. We discussed continuing the relationship or not. I was so in shock that I didn't really know what to do. People might say I'm crazy because I thought about staying, but I just was in a fight or flight. I was frozen. We separated, and I wanted better for him, and I knew he had made a mistake, and I really viewed it as a mistake, that he wasn't trying to hurt me at that time. That was just what he said, and I believed him. Then for those 4 years, we actually shared custody of our dog. We repaired a friendship. Fast forward to 2024, January, I was with a friend and he was telling me about, his experience, because he had a negative experience with the website. And I told him my story. I said, well, this is what happened to me. I don't like that website. It stresses me out. And he said, Natalie, have you ever checked to see if that video is really gone? And I just felt like I was hit by a truck, because I thought, oh my gosh, I've never checked. Meanwhile, back in 2019, I had actually contacted Fetlife myself and said, hey, I want to get this removed. And there was some controversy there because they said it was his content and my face wasn't identifiable. So they had a hard time figuring out if it was actually me or not. I went back on to this Fetlife website, logged in with like a dummy account, and looked him up. Sure enough, his profile pops up. I'm like, okay, that's fine. He's allowed. I don't judge people for what they do. But there was his profile, and I scrolled down, and there was the video. When I clicked on it, I was once again nude on the internet without my consent. And I saw that the video had been posted 4 years ago. My heart just dropped. Every mix of emotions you can imagine, because I forgave him, and I chalked it up to a mistake. I didn't go to police. I didn't take any legal action against him. I had empathy for what he described as basically a mental illness and a pornography addiction. I called him. I told him what I found. He did admit to it. He did cop up to it. He said that he didn't know how it got on there. Ultimately, I went to the police because I couldn't trust him. I couldn't trust, and it had been there for 4 years. I needed to make sure this was gone, and the only way to really do that was to involve the authorities. I met with an officer. Eventually, charges were laid, 2 charges. One was voyeurism for taking the video without consent, and the other charge was distribution of an intimate image without consent. After finding this, I had to my mental health just dissolved, because I was scared, Who's seen it? Have they seen it? What have they done with it? Where is this content? And I just kind of fell apart. And it's been very difficult. In August of last year, he pled not guilty to both charges. He later accepted a plea deal by the Crown that would drop the voyeurism charge in exchange for a guilty plea to distribution of images without consent. I had a lot of evidence that proved he did, and he admitted it himself. At certain times, it was suggested that I had taken the video or I had reactivated his profile. The victim blaming was very real. His sentencing was on January 6th. He received 4 months house arrest, which was served or will be served or is now being served actually in 40 days of actual house arrest, 40 days of curfew, and 40 days of probation. And then he has 1 year probation after that. So a pretty light sentence considering my body was naked on the internet for 4 years. I was very fortunate. I had a great judge who was very empathetic and listened and told me how strong I was. And I think it's important for the judiciary system to recognize victims how I was recognized by Judge DeLay. Through the process, I had some people who were supportive and some people who were not. As a survivor of an act of intimate partner violence, that it doesn't always start at that level. And intimate partner violence is not always physical. And the judge saying, you know, this is an act of intimate partner violence really was affirming for me. Sharing intimate images and video or taking them without consent absolutely is abuse, because you are taking advantage of somebody's vulnerability. Taking something that you share with that person and using it for your own gain or to hurt them is absolutely abhorrent. Reading my victim impact statement in court was probably the hardest thing I've ever done from an emotional perspective. I was scared to see him. I hadn't seen him or spoke to him or had any contact with him for well over a year. I wanted to do it because I wanted him to hear what had happened. I also wanted there to be a record of how this made me feel and the impact it had on me, so that when future judges are looking at these cases, they can understand what it feels like. I stand here today to have my voice heard, to speak for myself, and to stand up for what is right. I ask the court to consider the profound impact this crime has had on my life. In the digital age, with the click of a button, someone can wield the power to make irreversible changes to another person's life, to their dignity, to their privacy, to their ability to live a normal existence. I decided to lift the publication ban and give up my anonymity and come forward to tell my story because women are dying. And intimate partner violence is an epidemic. It never starts with being murdered. It starts in smaller ways. Not all victims become survivors. And since I became public with my original story on the CBC, I've had dozens of women reach out to me. Sometimes you feel like as the victim, all you're doing over and over again is having to prove yourself while he's out walking free. And getting justice is a hard process, but I want other women to know that it's worth it and that they have options. This crime has been convicted. I had a guilty conviction. That is hard to get. There has to be enough evidence to support it. My other charge was thrown out. This happens a lot. It shattered my whole life. It exposed parts of me, you know, physically and emotionally that I never thought would be exposed. It has left me living in a state of fear at times. It's caused me to have trust issues in my relationships because you just don't know what somebody's capable of. Since I originally came out, I have seen comments about my weight, about my size, about my appearance. People don't believe me. I don't care. And you shouldn't care either. It can happen to anybody. There's thousands of women out there who have stories similar to mine, who stumble across something they didn't know existed on the internet, or who had a friend who did it, or who have been taken advantage of in the same way. So before you place judgment on me, I would like you to ask yourself, if this was somebody you loved and they came to you with this story, what would be your reaction?